We all love bowling. What's not to love about throwing some balls at a couple of sticks and watching them fall over? The problem is, every time I go bowling, my ball tends to just turn right and fall into the gutter. So today's the day I'm gonna fix that. And there's only one way to practice that makes sense to me. Playing every bowling game on Steam. We're gonna split the games we're playing today into separate categories, starting with... We're gonna start this journey with a wacky little bowling RPG called Quent Blast. Alright, so they want my name. Okay, well he looks like a happy little guy, so let's go with wait, he's kinda got the moves though. Yeah, let's go with dance. Yeah, that's dance. Alright, now they want to know my idol. Oh, this one's easy. We're not long into the video, but I just want to cut myself off from the script to say that, you know, Paulie from Sopranos never actually says, "Hey, don't," like, at all. Or at least not from what I can find. I had a bit in the script where the default name for this guy was Tony. And I was just gonna say, "Hey, Tony," and put like a, you know, a little video, little clip of Paulie saying, "Hey, Tone," in the video. But it turns out there's like no clips anywhere online, so I'm assuming that he doesn't actually say that at all in Sopranos, and it's just like one guy said it on Twitter or something, and you know, with the iconic image, and it just took off, and there's like, you know, he didn't say it at all. Anyway, Quent Blast starts off with our guy Dance here, waking up in his bedroom in a world where Bowling Co. runs everything. And today we're starting our new job at bowling. They're playing an episode about sands on the TV tonight.
This is your brain on drugs.
Dance? Seriously? What an incredibly stupid name!
Man. Not long after I learn how to bowl and we kill this rat, that guy Tony shows up to kidnap our new boss, so I guess we'll go save him. Quent Blast is a really unique RPG that uses bowling as its turn-based combat, instead of your typical selecting your attack from a list. Maybe I'm biased here because I like bowling, but the combat in this game is really fun. Whenever I play RPGs, I tend to only go for attacks like the empty-headed homunculus I am, but Quent Blast does have other mechanics that I really severely neglected to actually look at. So there's probably a lot more to this game that you're not seeing here if you wanted to check the game out for yourself. And because I refused to use all the mechanics in the game, I ended up grinding the same alleyway of cats for like an hour because I kept dying and I couldn't figure out how to save the game. But eventually, after doing some grinding, I moved to the next area, and I stumbled on this fire hydrant guy. And he's really worried I'm gonna pee on him for some reason. So I fought him for a while. He did actually get peed on. Then I made my way into a building where we find one of Tony's grunts. And this man is really self-conscious about his arms. After battling it out with Kale for a while, his name's Kale by the way, I realize I'm way too underleveled and I die. And I still don't know how to save the game, and I'm not going to grind for another hour, so I think that's where we'll call it on Quent Blast. This game is really goddamn cool though. It has so much charm and it was incredibly fun the whole time I was playing. But unlike me, you guys probably have the brains to actually figure out how to save the game, so if this game looks interesting to you, you'll probably have a lot of fun, and it's free, so why not check it out? Now, if you've played more than a handful of bowling games, you might know that the controls can vary wildly, and the pins can behave very differently from game to game. So I'm going to give each game a rating for its controls, pin action, and overall fun, based on nothing at all. The controls in Quent Blast are unique and fun. I was a big fan of how you become more inaccurate the more power you used. So for Quent Blast, the bowling gets 7 John Goodmans. The pin action in this game, 8 Steve Buscemi's. And the game as a whole was a blast. The art style's unique and fun, and I had a blast playing it. Quent Blast gets 9 Jeff Bridges. Spare Devil is a high-octane arena shooter with pins for enemies and balls for ammo. This game has a lot of charm with its visual style, from its pins with their smug little faces, to the Doom Guy health indicator, and, you know, they've got this guy. The movement in Spare Devil feels good. Playing competitive shooters religiously for 10 years gives you a special kind of brain rot. The kind of brain rot that makes good movement in a first-person shooter feel like you're 15 hitting a jewel for the first time behind your mother's back.
That's no good.
Your attacks feel punchy and satisfying, if not a little slow. But I guess in terms of throwing a bowling ball, it's kind of keeping it more accurate in that sense. It feels pretty good though, and there's big lasers. There's so much happening on screen at once that it makes 30 seconds of gameplay feel like 5 minutes. It's pretty easy to get sucked into the overwhelming gameplay, and the combo system makes you feel like you're the best to ever do it. The leaderboard also made it really hard to stop playing this game. Spare Devil is one of those games that you open when you've got a couple of minutes to kill with nothing else to do, which makes it a little hard to talk about in depth. But if you want, I mean, we can talk about, I don't know, this guy. I like his face. He's got a nice, smile. Movement felt good, bowling was satisfying, 9 John Goodmans. Can't get more action or pins than this, 9 Steve Buscemi's. Spare Devil's super fun, but it's also kind of a small game by nature, so I think the overall fun comes from how much you want to strive for achievements or a spot on the leaderboard. 7 Jeff Bridges. Sadball is wild. I came into this one expecting a pretty basic 3D platformer, but my god, this is anything but that. This game is so weird and surreal, and that made it really hard to put down. Sadball is a game where you play a regular old match of 10-pin bowling, but when your ball gets to the end of the lane, instead of hitting the pins, this little guy has to hunt them down one by one in these increasingly wacky environments, with this Alex person chiming in every now and then to keep us company. The first set of levels have you wandering through these calming, grassy areas with some shapes scattered about. And even though Alex made these areas with the intent to keep me calm and relaxed, I can't help but feel overwhelmed by the barrage of sounds and visual effects happening at any given time, combined with slippery controls and a camera that does whatever it wants. And that might sound like a bad thing, but I think it really adds to what Sadball is with all its surrealism charm. Each level in Sadball has a way of getting out aside from just knocking down the pins, which means not every game ends up being a 300. And this might sound silly, but I think that's really cool. And I like how the spirit of a regular game of bowling is still present in Sadball, and that it's not just a 3D platformer with a bowling theme slapped on top. After I finished the first 10 frames, I honestly didn't expect much more out of the game. I expected to play again and have another set of surreal, colourful levels, but Sadball keeps on giving. I played 2 games of Sadball, the second one being in this depressing, eerie, empty mall, with our friend Alex having some real somber, melancholic things to say. And judging by the screenshots on the Steam page, Sadball looks like it has a lot more to offer in terms of its environments, which is a plus considering I think the environments are probably the biggest draw for this game. When I was recording the footage for this video, Sadball was by far the game I played the most of, second to Quemplast. So I think these intentionally weird games just naturally appeal to me, but I was pretty enamored by Sadball, and I'm excited to play more of it. 5 John Goodmans, 6 Stephen Buscemi's, and 9 Jeff Bridges.
Fucking A.
Bowl Out! I know I shouldn't compare it to another game, but it's like if you took Spare Devil and made it friendlier and level-based. Bowl Out is another FPS bowling game, but in this one you can pick the pins up and whack more pins with it. It's rad. I think Bowl Out is the only game I actually finished in this video. I even came back after I finished it to get some high scores. I had a good time with it, but for some reason it's also the game I have the most nitpicks for. Maybe I just hate to see an indie dev winning. I think visually this game is still really fun and interesting in a more light-hearted way, but I don't find it as charming as the games we've talked about so far. And in the off chance that the devs see this video, I don't mean that in a negative way. The game is pretty and looks good, especially compared to some of the things we have coming up. The damage effects, specifically, are really nice and fun and I appreciate them. I also wasn't a fan of the fact that I could just spam left click and send a million balls out at once. It kinda makes the attack feel weaker. The movement here is also really basic. I don't know why I came into this game expecting it to be different, but it's just basic is all. I'm not so sure that's even a bad thing. I might just be an asshole. Each level is a pretty different environment, which definitely kept the game fun. I like when a game with bowling also has an arcade. It feels nice. I like it. Also, this art here goes so hard. Pin action is fast-paced and fun. 7 John Goodmans. Bowling is spam left click. 4 Steve Buscemi's. Bowl Out was pretty fun and the only one I beat. I kinda ragged on this game, but I think from memory, this game was a student project turned Steam game, and it's by far one of the cheapest games on the list. And price isn't really a factor for the scoring, but because this game is definitely worth the fun for the price, it's getting 9 Jeff Bridges. I don't make the rules. Both! It's like golf, but you knock down some pins when you get to where the hole should be. Both seems to have a decent amount to do in it. Lots of clubs and customizations to unlock, but it's definitely more heavy on the golf aspect of the game. The bowling is pretty finicky, and unless you're a real golf head, it's not easy to get the hang of the bowling. It was really hard to hit those dang pins. I think as far as golf games go, it's pretty good, but I'm not into golf, I'm into bowling, and the bowling here falls a little short. It doesn't control very well, and the bowling's a bit of an afterthought. I'm sort of skipping over this one a little bit because, I mean, again, it's more golf than bowling, so we're just gonna breeze right past this. And while it might be a good golf game, the bowling here is rough. 3 John Goodmans.
Fucked it up!
The pins are a little light feeling and overall aren't very satisfying to hit. 3 Steve Buscemi's. As a golf game, it's good, but the bowling leaves a lot to be desired. 4 Jeff Bridges.
I don't like this, Christy, wake up! I don't like this!
This game pissed me off. Impossible looks really graphically impressive, but this game was stupidly unfair. I think it's trying to be a rage game, you know, something akin to Cat Mario, but it doesn't really pull off the same feeling, where it's unfair but it's kinda funny so it gets a pass. Impossible just kinda throws obstacles at you with no time to react at all, and the music restarts every time you die. I appreciate what the dev was going for here, and it does well in parts, but it's just a frustrating experience overall. You have to slow to a halt to even stand a chance, and that's just boring. Also, this boat minigame was annoying as hell. I didn't like the controls. 2 John Goodmans. I didn't get to see any pin action in this game. 0 Stevie Buscemi's. 3 Jeff Bridges. Moving on. I actually really liked this game. Pin Crasher is a really simple high score game with some real mobile game energy. Your ball rolls, you avoid obstacles, and you hit pins. Each pin you hit adds to your timer. It's a really nice use of the bowling aspect of the game. Something this game gets really right is how the ball interacts with the pins. It's just super satisfying to knock them down. It's real juiced up. This game would fit right at home on mobile, but I still think it's a fun little game here on Steam. I don't think I'll find myself playing it much more than I already have, but I'm still satisfied with it. If it had achievements, I'd be hooked. Controls or whatever, it's just A and B, for Johnny boys. But the pin action in this game is actually good. 7 Steve Buscemi's. Pin Crasher is tiny, but it's nice. 6.5 Jeff Bridges. Moving on from... We've got... Rope bowling is like if you cut the rope, removed the soundtrack, took all the style out of the game, slapped a bowling theme on it, and made the game have nothing to do with bowling aside from 2 sprites. This game belongs on an iPad in 2010, not Steam in 2023. But even then, Cut the Rope came out in 2010 and it's still infinitely better than this game. It's just nothing, man. The puzzles are bad and way too slow, sound effects suck, and the game is just visually uninteresting. I'm not happy. Zero Big, Zero Lebowski's. Next up in the list of really bad bowling games, we've got Puzzle Bowling. It's like a slide puzzle but boring. Yes! I know you probably didn't come to this video looking for games to play, and if you did, it's probably to find bowling games. But if you like puzzles, there's so much better than this. Do you like video games specifically? Go play Portal. There's not a lot of sliding in Portal, but if you want to play a puzzle video game, go play one of the best games ever made, not this. Not to mention you can buy it for practically the same price if it's on sale. And if you specifically wanted to slide some pieces around on a grid, go buy Rush Hour instead. There is a Steam version of Rush Hour, but I think the best part about slide puzzles is the tactile feeling of zipping those little pieces across a board. I don't know why anyone would want to buy this game outside of people like me who feel like wasting their money to make videos. Game's bad. 1 tin of Folgers. Bowling Over It, a game pretty directly inspired by Getting Over It, isn't as bad as you might think at first glance. I think it passes just fine as another 40yen game, and it does capture the vibe of Getting Over It pretty well. The voiceover might leave a little bit to be desired.
Hey, you crook! Why are you knocking the pins in my garden?
I don't think it's quite on the same level as Getting Over It.
A pin instead of a shield at the top of my castle. What a rascal, dishonoring my family.
But it's still a frustrating, hard to control game just like you'd expect. I think Bowling Over It pulls off what it's trying to do pretty well, and I got a good 30 minutes of fun out of it before I decided that playing a game that's intentionally frustrating isn't quite my speed.
Not quite my tempo.
The props scattered throughout this game could have been a lot more heavily bowling themed, which probably would have made this game stand out a lot more. But I think it's more going for the look of Getting Over It, just with a bowling ball in place of this guy. It's not so bad. The controls of the ball aren't really typical of actual bowling, which makes sense here, but it's also just kind of a ball more so than a bowling ball, so the bowling gets 4 John Goodmans. The pins aren't a very big deal in the game, they're just kind of placed about. I think that they're more for a bonus challenge, and for that, Bowling Over It gets 3 Steve Buscemi's. But overall, the game wasn't so bad. I think you get what you pay for. 5.5 Jeff Bridges. Bomb Bowling 1 and 2 are separate games on the Steam store, but the games were a little too similar to each other, so I thought I'd just lump them together here. I have a soft spot for these kind of games. Bomb Bowling is pretty similar to a lot of the old random flash games you'd come across. You know, not the classics we all know, but back when you'd be on your shitty family computer looking for anything to play. I think it's also a lot to do with the fact that this game was made with Game Maker, my beloved. I think a lot of classic Game Maker games have a certain feel about them, not dissimilar from the way flash games make me feel. As far as the game itself goes, the puzzles weren't bad, they were pretty fun, and they were often intentionally designed to just make something cool happen on screen. Very Rube Goldberg. I managed to breeze through all the levels on both games in about 2.5 hours. I'm gonna be honest, I mostly finished them both for the easy 100% achievements on Steam. Something about Bomb Bowling makes me love it a lot, even if they probably aren't the best games. But even though I like these games a lot, if we're going on pin action and the feel of the bowling balls alone, Bomb Bowling falls short. The balls are just balls, they've got some weight to them, but they're a little boring. 3 John Goodmans. The pin action is pretty lackluster, they're pretty weightless and don't pack much of a punch. 2 Steve Buscemi's. I'm definitely a little too biased for Bomb Bowling, and because of that, it might be a little unfair to the rest of the games here, but I'm giving Bomb Bowling 7 Jeff Bridges. I love you, Bomb Bowling. I don't even want to talk about this game. It's garbage. Don't buy it. Moving on.
You are not the guy. You're not capable of being the guy. I had a guy, but now I don't. You are not the guy.
From what I can gather online, Hyperbowl was originally an arcade game that used a bowling ball-sized trackball to control the game. And then later on there was a version of Hyperbowl for Windows XP that people seem to have a lot of fun memories of. From what I can tell, the Steam version seems to be a remake of the game using original assets in Unity. I might be old enough to remember flash games, family PCs, and a lack of smartphones, but but I missed the mark on Hyperball it seems, so I might be about to upset some people that have fond memories of this game. Hyperball is a pretty simple arcade game, where you roll a ball down a lane, avoiding the obstacles and hitting the pins. I think if I'd played this game at an arcade with a massive trackball, I'd have a grand old time, but here it kinda leaves a little bit to be desired. I think again, it might be a bit more fun with a pair of rose-tinted nostalgia goggles, but it's definitely not the best bowling game out there. The environments and sounds do have a pretty distinct feel to them, and I dig the old school visuals. And as far as bowling goes, it's probably the closest thing we have to real bowling so far. I just think that there's better options out there. Nostalgic for some, but not me. Pin action and bowling are pretty good though. 6 John Goodmans, 7 Steve Buscemi's. I can see the value in this game, and for that I'm gonna give it 6 Jeff Bridges with an extra super rare rose-tinted Jeff. Roxy Raccoon's Bowling Bash feels heavily inspired by Hyperball, but I feel it misses the mark a little. It's like if you took Hyperball, gave it a story, made the levels more in-depth but somehow less fun, broke a raccoon's spine and slapped a bow on it. I think on paper, Roxy Raccoon's Bowling Bash has more to offer than Hyperball, but it's also not nearly as fun. Controlling the ball feels pretty slow and clunky, and it never quite felt right trying to hit the pins. You'd sort of get locked into your angle at the very last second, and it made it pretty hard to try to hit the pins how you wanted to. This game is pretty well received, and the people that play it tend to get quite a bit of gameplay out of it. But I just couldn't get into it. Maybe I'm just a jaded asshole. I think I'd have more fun playing Roxy Raccoon's Mancala Madness. 3 John Goodmans, 4 Steve Buscemi's, 3 Jeff Bridges. As far as bowling games where you are the ball go,
Arkham Asylum makes you feel like you're
bowling balls, Impossible is by far the best. This game is free, offers a bunch of unlockable skins and balls, and has a pretty wide variety of levels that are drastically different from one another, which is something the other games similar to this seem to kinda lack. The way this game controls is pretty satisfying, and each level feels like a unique, fun little challenge. There's also a power-up system that can spice up the way you approach each level, leaving a lot of room for variety with its gameplay. This game is pretty new, but it looks like their approach is to have it be free, then release DLC packs for more levels, balls, and power-ups. Although in saying that, so far there's only one DLC and it's free, so maybe Ducktopus Games are just bringing us a really fun game at the cost of nothing. They do have a supporter pack though, and I hope they get the support they deserve. This game is way more fun than its other counterparts, and they absolutely could have charged for it. Bowling feels good, 7 John Goodmans. Pin action is A-OK, 7 Steve Buscemi's. Impossible is really fun, and they're offering it up for free. Thanks Ducktopus. 8 Jeff Bridges.
I'm crazy, insane, asylum.
Have some fun with crazy.
Bowling. Crazy Bowling sucks. It's an extremely bare-bones bowling game with its gimmick being that the pins are set up in different ways each level, which is something other bowling games just offer as a side mode. Half the time you'll knock all the pins down and it'll still count as a loss. Crazy Bowling looks bad, the UI is ugly, the pins are really floaty, the ball has no weight to it, but hey, you can tilt the stage. I love Monkey Ball. I think if you were to buy this game on sale, you'd get what you pay for, but you could also just buy a better game. 1 Mr. Burns Bowling.
Oh, it's hopeless.
Lane Splitters is a short little game, lasting about 20 minutes, but it's a fun and unique twist on bowling, and a cool little free experience. Lane Splitters uses these big old tanks to blast your bowling ball out at high speeds, and instead of taking turns to throw a bowling ball, you both launch your balls at the same time, leaving you fighting to hit the same set of pins. Lane Splitters has a pretty distinct style, taking place in an almost cyberpunk, futuristic bowling world. It nails the feel it's going for, and does what it sets out to do. It was a fun little game that you should check out if it looks interesting to you. It only lasts a short while, so it's an easy thing to experience and be done with. Bowling felt decent, worthy of at least 5 John Goodmans. Pin action was pretty satisfying, getting 6.5 Steve Buscemi's. And the game is pretty unfaultable for what it is. A short, fun experience at the low price of nothing. It deserves at least 7 Jeff Bridges. How much more bowling can you get than a game simply titled Bowling? The answer is probably a lot more than this. Bowling is by far the worst bowling game on Steam. This game only works with controller, which sure, that's fine, but for some reason the G key lets you start a game and the U key does this. But that means nothing and doesn't affect how bad the game actually is. For a game called Bowling, it gets a hell of a lot wrong in trying to replicate the game of bowling. And to demonstrate the first thing that's wrong with this game, we're going to take a break from your regularly scheduled program to teach you a lesson with
Sorry dudes, I didn't see you there. So you want to learn how to score in the game of 10-pin bowling? Well, I've got your back. In the game of 10-pin bowling, you score points by knocking down the pins. And as you may know, there's also 2 other ways to score points. Those are called spares and strikes. Now, if you fail to knock down all the pins with your first ball, you're gonna get a second chance. And if you knock down the rest of those pins with that second ball, that's called a spare. But bros, what does a spare even do? Well, my dudes, when you achieve a spare, your first ball in the next frame will be added to your total score of the last frame, as well as counting in the current frame. Cool. Now I hear you dudes. You don't fully understand it yet, and that's okay. So let me give you an example. If I were to get a spare in the first frame, in the next frame, if I let's say I got maybe 7 pins with my first ball, that 7 pins is going to be added to the first frame. So now my first frame is worth 17 pins. Isn't that radical? But not only that, the 7 pins I got in the second frame still counts towards my score. How crazy! Now, my teachers always told me I wasn't the best at math, but after I knock down those 7 pins and they get added to the first frame, that should leave me with let's say 24? And dudes, I hear you. Getting a spare is way past lame. What we're really after is the strikes. But what does a strike even do? Well, my bodacious buds, a strike, unlike a spare, is gonna add the first and the second ball of your next frame. That means if I were to get a strike and then I got a spare in the next frame, the strike in the previous frame would be worth 20 points. Isn't that radical? Now, from what I understand, it doesn't really work that way in the 10th frame because for some reason, the 10th frame has 3 balls. I don't get it, man. Anyway, dudes, that's about all the time we have for today. So until next time, keep getting those strikes and have a radical day. Cowabunga!
The point is, bowling on Steam doesn't work like this at all. Spares count for nothing, and a strike is just worth 20 points. It makes no sense and I hate it. How can you call your game bowling, clearly basing it off of 10-pin bowling, and then ignore the rules of bowling? Not to mention the pins don't get cleared between balls. So it's more akin to candlepin bowling, where you can use the wood left on the lane to your advantage by knocking the fallen pins into the ones that are still standing. But on top of all that, it controls awfully, the ball rarely goes where it looks like you're aiming, and if your power meter goes just a little too high, the ball flies onto the next lane. This game is awful and overpriced, don't look at it. Bowling for Steam gets a total score of 1 negative review.
Monster Jam, Monster Jam, Monster Jam rules.
Bash Sports Online Bowling is a little bit silly. The way this game controls is actually pretty fun, even if it's not totally accurate to bowling. It's fairly hard not to get a mark in this game, but it's still a fun arcadey experience. I played the only mode available to a lonely person like me, the arcade mode, which pits you up against a different CPU opponent each match. And damn girl, in heels? It was pretty easy to clean house against these bots. They didn't seem to scale in difficulty at all, which was a little disappointing. But I'm ignoring the best and most disappointing feature of Bash Sports Online Bowling, and that's the
Rocket Launcher!
This game uses special abilities, which from the 2 characters I played and based on the CPUs next to me, is only a rocket launcher, even though the store page boasts its 9 characters having unique abilities. The rocket launcher gimmick makes the store page really stand out, but what's disappointing is that it doesn't recharge or anything. It's basically a one-time use button per game to let you get a free strike, which kinda just turns it into a regular game of bowling minus 1 frame. It doesn't recharge or affect the other player, there's no upgrading or changing it. It just makes the game a little quicker and is kinda funny to look at. So while Bash Sports is fun, it's kinda just an arcadey game that's a little too easy and boasts a gimmick that doesn't even add anything to the game. Also, side note, and potentially a pretty niche reference, but something about this game reminds me of B-Hop Monster Jam. 5 Johnny Boys, 4 Stevie Weebies, 6.5 Jeffies.
Ah, shit, here we go again.
Bowling Hills might be one of the best games on this list, and I think it's criminally underrated. Bowling Hills' gimmick is that it's another bowling game that mixes itself with golf, but with this one, the lanes are grassy and often aren't level, switching it up each frame, but I don't feel like it gets in the way of the bowling itself, to the point that it takes away from the bowling side of things. But it also does enough to add something different. but what I think makes Bowling Hills so great is its controls and the way the pins feel when you hit them. The way Bowling Hills controls is initially the same as most bowling games, with lining up where you want your ball to go and the angle of it, but what I think makes Bowling Hills so great and intuitive is that as soon as you start your approach, your mouse controls the player's arm, so you'll pull your mouse down to swing your arm back and push it forward to release. You can also adjust the hook on the ball by pulling to the side a little, and you're also judged on the timing of your release, and it all makes for a really nice experience. The pins are also nice and snappy, they have a nice weight to them, and compared to a lot of the other bowling games, they interact with each other in a way that feels similar enough to real bowling. I think it all works so well, and the whole game has a very lighthearted and fun feel to it. Bowling Hills gets a prestigious 9 on all fronts. I like this game a lot. Date Night Bowling is a game that lets you take a variety of characters on dates to 2 different bowling alleys of your choice. You'll play a game of bowling where each frame you'll have a little interaction with your partner, and play a little minigame that revolves around the social aspects of the date. It's the only 2D/pixel art game on this list that represents actual bowling, which immediately gives it a soft spot in my heart. But Date Night Bowling is also a tad disappointing to me. I was actually really excited to play this game on release. I thought it could have been a fun bowling game that sort of mixed up the norms of bowling games that tend to not really have a whole lot to offer. Like, yeah, I get that if you buy a bowling game, you probably just want to bowl in it, but I thought it was neat to offer up a game that adds a little more meat to it and gives you a reason to want to bowl in this virtual world. But there's not a whole lot of depth to this game. There's a lot of variety in terms of characters to unlock and to take on dates, but it's a pretty arcadey experience in that your date spans 1 game of bowling, interspersed by a bunch of minigames, which is pretty fun, but you don't really form much of a relationship with the characters. There's no dialogue that fleshes out anyone. You just go on your date and go about your day. Maybe they tried and it didn't work, but I feel like Date Night Bowling would benefit from some kind of story mode that lets you interact with the other characters more in depth and actually have you form a relationship. The controls are pretty solid, kinda reminiscent of that one Neo Geo bowling game, 7 Pixel Goodmans. When I got into game dev, the first thing I wanted to do was make a bowling game, but learning how to make pin physics work in a 2D game was beyond me. Maybe I'm just dumb, or maybe it's easier in different engines, but these pins are impressive as hell to me. 8 Pixel Buscemi's. Date Night Bowling is still a fun little arcade experience despite me wishing for more out of it. 7 Pixel Bridges. Next up, we have a game that perfectly encapsulates the gimmicky bowling games of old. Things like your Elf Bowling, your Hyper Bowl, your Elf Bowling Hawaiian Vacation. I thought I'd have more examples in this. Zombie Bowlerama has you bowling down hordes of zombies using special abilities or disadvantages to use against your opponent that are scattered about the lane. As far as games that take bowling and add a twist, Zombie Bowlerama is by far the most fun. Getting high scores is relatively easy, a lot of the power-ups are very overpowered, but it's a real spectacle to watch the unique abilities at play. So while the game is made easier, it's a very fun and casual experience. Plus, there's the added bonus of old 2009 PC game charm. Zombie Bowlerama has a lot to offer, having a campaign mode, free play and multiplayer, as well as a neat challenge mode. Apparently I got really into this game back in 2019 because I have over 100 attempts at a 300 in the challenge mode. This game is really well done, the gameplay is really nice, its unique animations, multiple lanes and fun power-ups kept me super engaged. I even tried my hand at bowling a 300 again, getting really close, but ultimately falling short in the 10th frame. Even though I've always loved bowling, I somehow didn't play a lot of these bowling games that people seem to have a lot of nostalgia for. So while I enjoyed the hell out of Zombie Bowlerama, I don't have much else to say about it. Good game though. Zombie Bowlerama gets 1 Rick Grimes. Desktop bowling is a cute, miniaturized version of bowling, with fun, wacky characters, a plethora of different balls to choose from, and anime! I've played a decent amount of desktop bowling on the Switch. I can't remember exactly why. I was probably between houses or on holiday and I bought a bunch of bowling games on my Switch to play. I remember desktop bowling being the one I played the most of, so I can pretty confidently say I like this game, but it also definitely does what it says on the tin. It does feel like a miniature version of bowling. It feels very kid-friendly, but it also has a lot of polish compared to other games. And I think that's what drew me to it. I played this game with a controller because the keyboard and mouse kinda sucked, and I'm pretty sure desktop bowling came out on Switch first, so the keyboard controls feel like a bit of an afterthought. But for a fairly solid bowling game with a lot of polish and a pretty decent amount of content and unlockables, with its quest mode that ends each area with a unique boss, a tournament mode, individual challenges, it's even got a party mode, and gacha. It's definitely not a bad game for its price. Probably more suited for Switch or Steam Deck. The controls are pretty intuitive and nice if you're using a controller, not so much with keyboard and mouse. 6 John Goodmans. The pin action isn't the greatest or most accurate, but it is pretty nice and snappy. 5.5 Steve Buscemi's. Desktop bowling is a fleshed out experience with a lot to do for the price. 7 Jeff Bridges. Premium bowling is the bowling game people say you should buy if you want to experience the closest thing to real bowling in virtual reality. But my VR headset's broken, so I'll never know what it's like to experience real virtual bowling. But premium bowling is still a very high polished and in-depth bowling game regardless if you're playing in VR or with a keyboard and mouse. Premium bowling is a game I'll open every now and then if I'm listening to something and don't have anything to do with my hands, and I usually just jump into the bowling alley at the top of the list. So I thought I'd take a different approach and see what else the game has to offer. And we're going to start by taking a look at the flashy disco arena. Each bowling alley has its own unique themed HUD and music that really adds to the overall feeling. And the disco arena is filled with bright colours and flashy lights that really nails the vibe of the bowling alley that appeals to the casual bowlers. And that's not a diss or anything. I think bowling alleys trying to reach a wider appeal is awesome. But I've been to bowling alleys where they like to serve fancy cocktails and prefer you don't wear bowling shoes. It's the type of place you'd stick to house balls at, so you don't wear your own bowling shoes and bring your own balls and then bowl 120 and have your friends say, "What the hell, man, I thought you were supposed to be good at bowling." And then you'd embarrass yourself and feel like a tryhard, and that you should have just used house balls because now you look like a fool and you low-key feel like you took away from the casual fun of bowling with friends because you wanted to bowl well, but you didn't bowl well because you bowled a 120, and now you're unhappy and you have to lug around a massive bag full of heavy balls, and you go home and lay in bed for the night thinking about how you don't know how to make friends, and this is why no one loves you and you'll never form any meaningful relationships, and it's probably why mum and dad got a divorce. And after seeing all the disco arena had to offer, I moved on to the retro lanes, where I had the pleasure of meeting this guy, who was really passionate about his bowling. And I don't blame him. This game has a lot to offer with its plethora of different balls, lanes, and oil patterns, support for a variety of playstyles. Hell, it's even got its own bowling league. While I don't have the pleasure of playing premium bowling in VR at the moment, the keyboard and mouse controls are still a fine way to play this game. After you line up your shot and lock in the power meter, your, I guess, crosshair, wiggles around in fights where you're trying to aim, to add a little bit more of a challenge and inconsistency to each shot. I think it's a pretty good system to make it more fair to your VR opponents. And so after bowling at the retro lanes for a while, admiring the VR bowlers and listening to this wonderful man having the time of his life, I moved on to the vintage 50s lanes. This bowling alley is a fun little novelty and had a nice old-timey feel to it. A very bright and poppy place to be with its funky music and decor. And while we enjoy the beautiful wallpaper and sound of pins clashing, I want to touch on another thing that I really enjoy about premium bowling, and that's the oil. The oil on premium bowling's lanes wear out and gets dragged down the lane as you bowl, and combining that with its almost perfect pins and the way the balls handle, they're really not wrong when they say it's as close to real bowling as you'll get without picking up a physical bowling ball. For some reason I didn't write the scoring down for this on the script, so I guess it's getting one broken HTC Vive. Next up, we're going to take a look at the only game on this list that's not strictly a bowling game, because I had it in my library and I thought I might as well cover as much bowling as I can. Tower Unite is basically a big multiplayer hub full of a ton of different game modes and attractions to visit. And my character model's Jake the dog with a bowler hat smoking a cigarette, so you'll have to excuse my camera being a little on the short side. And while we're here to check out the bowling alley, I couldn't help but wander the arcade to see what had changed since the last time I played. The arcade has a decent variety, ranging from things like Down the Clown to Quick Drop and coin pushes, but that's nothing new to me, so I decided against playing any games here and quickly headed to the bowling alley. Upon entering, we're greeted by a grumpy looking man in a giant pin costume, and while the bowling alley is small, it does have a party room, so that's cool. The bowling in Tower Unite is pretty basic, but it does the job well enough as a fun distraction in a game with a lot of other things to offer. You select where you want your ball to go, push your mouse forward, which also decides the angle of the ball, and then apply spin on your approach. It's nothing special. But what is surprisingly special, that we didn't see much, if any of, throughout the video, is the animations that play on the monitor. There's not a wide variety, but they're unique, and they're there, unlike most other games. That's not to say it's really a staple of bowling. I can't remember the last time I saw an animation on the monitors of a bowling alley, but it definitely adds to the experience. Editor's note, I was at Bowling League like a couple of days ago, and the monitors there do play the animations. I'm just used to seeing them, I guess. I think the bowling in Tower Unite, out of all the games we played today, would be the best to play with some friends. You could easily spend a night hanging out in Tower Unite, seeing everything the game has to offer, and the bowling here fits really well. And after bowling a cool 175 on the lanes, I headed back to the pin at the desk to buy a shiny new bowling ball with the money I earned from gambling at Tower Unite's casino. So with my brand new shiny ball, I was determined to bowl even better in my next game. Coming to the lanes with a newfound confidence in the power of wealth and status, I managed to muster up a grand total score of slightly worse than last time. Because Tower Unite's bowling is more of a side distraction, rather than the main focus of the game, I won't give it a rating, but I will give it a big thumbs up.
Who do you think you are? I am!
This is what it's all been leading up to. I've put in the hard hours, grinding hours of bomb bowling, impossible, and lane splitters, mastering my spare game with Spare Devil and Bowl Out, and gaining confidence and support through the power of love. If I can't make it all work here, no, I have to make it work. All my hours of suffering and hard work needs to pay off here, in the Professional Bowling Association's Pro Bowling. If I can beat the big guys, I can do anything. I can transfer my knowledge here to the lanes in real life, and show that anything is possible if you just put your mind to it. So I joined a tournament, with my first opponent being that of Rhino Page. With a decently polished game that has a variety of real-world balls, oil patterns, and pins that look and feel great to hit, this is my best shot to prove I can do it. After a close and hard-fought game, it all came down to this. Rhino Page misses the spare in the 10th. I can finally do this. All I need to do is have a clean 10th frame, and I can face my fellow countryman Jason Belmonte in the finals, and join the big dogs in the PBA. It all comes down to this. 8 pins with the first ball of the 10th frame is fine. This is what I practice for. I can convert this spare no problem. I just need to keep calm and remember what I've learned. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. This video took like a month to make, so I hope the effort I put into it shines through. I want to give a big shout out to my partner Aselixir on Twitter for doing the little pixel art Big Lebowski characters I used in the date night bowling section. Go check Mickey out.
That's my wife.
I had a lot of fun making this video, but it took a long ass time to edit, so give me some feedback on whether or not you like how edited it is, and if I should keep doing it, or if I should maybe just cut back and try for a more laid back approach. And if you did like this video, please like and subscribe. I assume it'll help a lot. I don't know, man, I just make the videos. I appreciate anyone who watched, and if you got this far, seriously, thank you so much. I hope you have an amazing day, and thanks for watching.